As a history teacher, I feel there's quite a big pressure on me now to represent the teaching community. I know there's quite a few teachers in the audience, so you'll help me out. So I'm just going to read some of the things that I currently teach, which I'm quite proud to teach and which I've worked very hard to learn and understand about. I'm still reading books on these issues, and there's been a bit of a debate in our school about what to include on the curriculum, which has involved leaving things out as well. But one thing that I would like to, that I think has been very good about the 2015 curriculum reforms is that teachers have been given some degree of autonomy in terms of making decisions about what to teach. And it has provoked debate amongst teachers. But there is still room for knowledge and evidence-based curriculum. If anybody was in the discussion at lunchtime about the Scottish curriculum reforms, trigger warning, it could be on its way here. So here we go. Alfred the Great, Athelstan, 1066, Magna Carta, Henry III, Wars of the Roses, Reformation, the Civil War, Bill of Rights, the Elizabethan era, Shakespeare and the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, the Enlightenment and the Scientific Revolution, the 1832 Reform Act, the British Empire, the 1918 Representation of the People Act, World War I, World War II, decolonisation. And I mean decolonisation as in the dismantling of the British Empire. So all those things I currently teach, and I think they all have a value as knowledge that I think British children need to know and understand growing up in Britain. Okay, Britain is not just anywhere. It has its own institutions and it has its traditions, and I think that by teaching this type of history, we give children an understanding of the environment in which they're growing up, the buildings that surround them, and the traditions and so on that take place in this country. Okay, so that's just maybe a bit controversial, I don't know. Going back to decolonisation and where that discussion is at the moment, I think Kevin's question was, do we need a decolonised or a patriotic curriculum? And I would say we've already got a decolonised curriculum. I think that battle has kind of been lost already. So I think it's now embedded in schools. And I've got two main objections to it. Number one, it selects knowledge in order to do, the way that it selects knowledge is no different in my mind to indoctrination or propaganda. There's currently a new textbook on the market called Black British History, which I assume some schools are going to start to use in their teaching. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but I've got an idea what's in it. The EdExcel exam board have in recent years brought in a new GCSE history, which is on migration to Britain. But one whole unit is on Notting Hill from 1948 to 1970. Interestingly enough, I read the kind of core content. It talks about Oswald Mosley in the 1950s, who I think lost 2 elections and then kind of faded into obscurity. It ends in 1970, so 2 of the race relations acts that were passed in the 1970s are not mentioned. And I don't think it even mentions the 1965 one, which is before the end of the syllabus date, but it's just not in the core curriculum or in the prescribed curriculum. So that's my first objection. The second is I think it essentializes knowledge. So it's motivated by ideas such as inclusivity, relevance, but I think it presupposes that, again, maybe a controversial thing to say, that only black poetry, for example, will speak to black students if you're teaching English literature. So taking certain things out, certain written works out and replacing them because they were written by an African poet or a black American writer, for example. What happens in my subject, in history, is that the curriculum, I feel, is becoming more and more broadened to include as many voices as possible, marginalized voices, for example. And I think in a lot of senses, it's just bad history. So here's another example. Did you know Henry VIII had a trumpeter who was black? Did we all know that? His name was John Blanc. He's depicted on the Westminster Tournament Roll of 1511. It's an interesting historical detail, but so I know in some schools they can spend a whole lesson on this. It was produced to celebrate the birth of Henry's son Edward. But why do we feel the need to use that? And I think it comes from what's her name, Kaufman's book called The Black Tudors.
Yep.
Okay, so I think that it's not strong disciplinary knowledge, it is tokenism. And I think I'm surprised that more students are not patronised by some of the stuff that's being taught to them in schools. If you've read Frank Furedi's book, War on the Past, he talks about we're kind of rearranging our past. We're reinforcing current preoccupations with identity and race and difference. History's been a subject, I mean, what to put in the curriculum has been a subject of debate since I started teaching in the 1980s. I'd like to say teachers should decide what's on the curriculum, but I'm not sure teachers are exempt from some of these, some of these prejudices at the moment. And so I think we could have a debate about that and discuss that a bit more. Who decides what's on the curriculum? Is it parents? Is it students? Is it teachers? Or is it the government? Have I got, how much time have I got? 1 minute, okay. I was going to talk briefly about patriotism. So I think Andre might have suggested that by decolonising the curriculum, this in and of itself could be a patriotic act. In other words, that's more representative of Britain today than maybe teaching, I don't know, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles or something like that. So I think, do I agree with this or not? I don't think patriotism can be taught. I think it's just as open to indoctrination. What I do think is that if we teach, in my subject, history, a chronological account of the history of British society and its institutions, it could serve to give all children an understanding of the world they inhabit, which is Britain, and maybe also to value it and to see how they are linked to other people living with them. That's it.
Brilliant. Brilliant.